Hello and welcome to this episode of Demystified as we explore home cooking in a modern world. Hello, I'm Linda and I'm here with my mate Paul. Hi Paul.
Social distance, Linda.
We are keeping very well away at the moment because we are in Melbourne and it's
Lockdown.
all pear-shaped.
Yeah.
Total pear-shaped.
So we might do Friday's one via Zoom or something because we might have to.
We might have to, we'll see.
Because we won't be able to talk
Through our masks.
Yeah.
I know. How are you, Paul?
I'm alright.
Today's topic is very interesting.
Yeah, well, so we're going to stick to so last week we started a cuisine type conversation. We kicked off with French, and you suggested today we go into, I think you even threw Moroccan out there.
I did throw Moroccan out there.
And Italian and other cuisine types, but we'll get back to that because I just want to pause on that for a second. Not that we don't have something to talk about there, but it's only because I've been doing some other work that I wanted to change topic today. So,
and when you told me what the topic was, I must admit I was like, okay, that's a big topic.
Well, it's not really.
Well, it is if we're talking about it for one whole episode.
Well, no, not. Yeah.
Okay, so the topic of the day, topic du jour.
Topic du jour
is.
Very good.
I know. I've been practicing.
Your French is getting better.
I've been practicing.
Say beef bourguignon.
Oh, I know, I'm not doing it. That's little small steps, baby, small steps. But today's topic is
salt.
Exactly.
Salt.
There you are. We're going to assault salt.
It's an assault on salt. On salt.
Our tastes.
Yeah. So what I wanted to talk about was, it's only because I've been doing other content work stuff and trying to highlight the importance of salt and the different salts that are out there and how to use them properly and correctly and how to pick the right ones to use. So, because it does change what happens to your food dramatically.
Okay. Because I always thought all salt was...
Here we go.
NCL.
Oh, there you're busting out the periodic table.
I actually don't
bet you
know.
That's wrong.
I bet you it's wrong.
I bet you that's wrong.
I bet you it
Ring
is.
Doug, he'll know.
But I thought all salt was still made up of the same chemical composition.
Okay.
Which could be or may not be NCL.
Yes, but it comes in different grades, different forms. So when we did if you think back to our polenta tutorial, we were talking about the different grades and grain sizes of polenta. So same in salt. Now, most people know rock salt, flake salt, table salt. So kosher salt,
veggie salt.
No, veggie salt isn't salt. All right, so let's just move away from veggie salt. That's the stupidest thing ever.
Right then.
we're not. When we're talking about salt, we're talking about product that we will actually use. So we won't use things like chicken salt, okay, ever, unless we make it ourselves.
Okay.
But let's just talk about the basics of salt.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the first thing to understand is most commercially available in a supermarket table salt, most, is iodized. So you see it written on the packet. Correct? Okay, so in the 1920s, global health authorities made a decision to add iodine to salt because there was iodine deficiencies in the global community. Now, what that did for salt itself gave it a very harsh metallic salinity and does nothing good to your food. It doesn't harm it, but it doesn't make salt do what I think salt should do. So what I'm talking about today is actually not using iodized table salt at all. Any salt that you use should be naturally occurring, which most salt is, but shouldn't have additives added to it like iodine, because it doesn't do anything good for the taste. Number one, you can go over the top with it quite easily, so it can overpower your food, and quite often there's anti-caking agents and other things like that in your salt. So salt is, in my view, the most important seasoning in food. And as you know, the way I cook, I use salt and olive oil like seasoning. Well,
Yes, you do.
olive oil especially as a seasoning.
Yes.
Not so much to cook with, but as a seasoning. And salt, I very rarely make, rubs, or I make spice mixes. But, sort of those, pre-made rubs and pre-purchased mixes that have got salt in them, very rarely use them because generally they're made with iodised salt because it's cheaper. But you always get that metallic taste. So, what salt is for what? So I'll start with the coarsest, which most people know, which is rock salt. Okay, so extraordinarily coarse, can go in a grinder, generally not iodised. Okay, so it doesn't have iodine added to it.
Mm-hmm.
And that salt's really good for doing a cure. So
with the pork belly and
gravlax, duck confit, anything like even bacon, any air dried hams or anything. Sometimes you'll use rock salt as a cure, but really, really coarse grain, so it doesn't cook out. So even if you do use it to cook with, the grain doesn't change as far as its structure goes. So if you bite into a piece of rock salt, you know all about it. Okay, so that's sort of if I go in grades, and this is just the most common ones. Okay, so I'm not delving into the hand-harvested million-year-old from the Grand Canyon salts. We'll just go the most sort of common.
Which wouldn't be that readily available anyway.
No, I mean, there are places that have like salt selections as part of their menu. So I know Thomas Keller at the French Laundry, in one particular dish, there is an entire plate that comes out with different salts from different parts of the world and supposedly aged differently, dug up from caves, the ancient cave of Batman's ancestors or something, I don't know, right? So, but there are like quite a few thousand different salts around, and each of them will have a different flavour profile because of the way they're harvested, and two, because where they come from. So salt from the Mediterranean is totally different to salt from Australia or the US.
Okay.
They're all very different because you have different salinity levels in the seawater, which is where, in my view, proper salt comes from. Anyway, so you thought we'd have nothing to talk about.
I thought this would be the shortest podcast ever.
Okay, and then if we go down in grain size, then you have something called fleur de sel. Okay, although the name's French, it means the flour of salt. And what fleur de sel is actually the thinnest layer which forms on top of evaporated seawater. So it's a really thin crust of salt that forms on top of evaporated seawater, and it's generally discoloured slightly, so it's not that pure white we know from salt. It's almost like got a grey sort of grain through it as well. Now the coarseness of that is less than rock salt, but more than, let's say, flake salt or table salt. And that is probably one of the purest seasonings you can use because it's got no additives. It's literally like hardened seawater. And it is a really good way to finish a dish. So you can use it to finish dishes like you would a flake salt. It's just slightly coarser. So it will give you a crunch, but not a break your teeth crunch.
Yeah.
Also really good for curing, but very rarely used to cook with. It's used to finish with or cure with.
Okay.
Fleur de sel was always right throughout Europe, so France, Spain, Portugal, Greece, and now the Americas are starting to harvest it. So just because of the name doesn't mean its origin. It's not like Reggiano Parmesan or anything. It's that top thin layer of crust that forms on top of the seawater. So Canada, Mexico, and Brazil are now harvesting some really good fleur de sels as well. So that's one to look out for. Fleur de sel's beautiful salt. Like you can just eat it. It's
and for those of us who
delicious.
Aren't confident with our
Salt
spelling,
selection, yeah.
How do you spell it?
Fleur. This is 3 words.
Okay.
Desel. Fleur de sel.
Fleur de sel. Okay, yeah. Thank you.
It means flour of salt.
Okay.
Okay, so next one down, we talk flake salt. So we're quite familiar with flake salt, and there's a lot of brands that are been known for a long time. Flake salt's really recognisable by its crystal makeup. So you'll often get pyramids or little boxes or, various different shapes of crystals, and we generally pinch that and crush it between our fingers over a finished dish. Again, 9 times out of 10, or almost 9.5 times out of 10, no iodine added. Fleur de sel's the same, just certainly no iodine added. And that's a finishing salt again, although I have been guilty of cooking with it because it is very natural as far as the flavour goes. Different colours as well. So we use Murray River salt because it's Australian, and that's got a pink hue to it. Not the same, not as deep a pink as Himalayan salt, which I'll talk about in a minute, but a slight pink hue to it, whereas Maldon salt, which is globally known as a really premium flake salt, is pure, it's got that pure white snowflake sort of look about it, and really light sort of crystals as well, very light to hold. Like you can put a handful of it in your hand, and that doesn't have much weight to it. And that's all in the way it's harvested too. So there are different methods of harvesting flake salt. Another one which is sort of gaining some momentum is a very small producer just outside of Auckland in New Zealand. And he's doing hand harvested flake salt. Now, a lot of salt is done via evaporation. So people will collect seawater and basically boil it down.
Okay.
Now, that takes an extraordinarily long amount of time. A lot of it's done on in the sun, by the sun as well. This guy has come up with a method of using vacuum to evaporate the salt from the water. So it's quite an intriguing small producer, but certainly like that. I mean, the water off the coast of Auckland is pretty pristine. So anywhere where you have pristine water is generally a good place. Somewhere in there you'll find some pretty good salt. So the Mediterranean, of course, anywhere around there. So flake salt's the next one down. If we started rock, fleur de sel, flake salt, and then we get to
with flake salt. Do you use it for curing or to finish? Or to cook?
To finish.
Okay.
Not for curing. No. So much. It's way too expensive for curing.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's probably one of the more expensive salts. So fleur de sel's pretty expensive as well, but not as expensive. Flake salt's generally hand harvested, and those shapes and shavings don't come just, without effort. So it is more expensive. So generally not for curing. It is also a textural thing. So like next time you scoop out some ice cream, just put a couple of flakes of like flake salt on top of the ice cream. So it's really important salt for dessert use as well, not just savoury use. So generally 99 times out of 100 just for finishing a dish.
Okay.
So over the top of your roast chicken, over the top of your pork, over the top of your pasta, a little bit on your ice cream, any of your desserts. Gives a nice crunch too. So I'm not going to...
I've never, ever, ever added salt to a dessert other than when I've made salted caramel for something. That's the only time.
Yeah, and how good is it though?
It's fantastic.
Yeah, so I'm not saying you go to a restaurant and ask for extra salt, but just so you get a sensation of what it gets you in the frame of mind of is when you do make your next dessert, add some salt.
Okay.
You should season your desserts like you do, maybe not to the same extent as you do your proteins, but you certainly need to add seasoning to get, because what does salt do? What's the main purpose of salt?
Bringing out flavour.
Yeah, so salt will actually help bring out the flavour of like a lemon curd, better than just straight sugar.
Well, there you are.
And any pastry as well, always.
Pastry, okay.
Yeah, sweet pastry, short crust pastries, any pastries. The only thing I don't salt like that is pasta, because it can mess up your pasta machine.
Oh,
so pasta doughs. So I season the water, not the pasta.
I know, and I have seen you put salt into the boiling water when you were doing the gnocchi video for cooking with steam, and I'm like, "Are you right there, buddy?" And you're emptying.
Well, we'll talk about that.
That was amazing. That was amazing. I remember that.
And so, flake salt. Next step down, kosher salt. So this is the all-rounder. This is the all-rounder that I think people should use. So kosher salt is a little bit more unrefined as far as the grain size versus table salt, but it's not as big a grain as flake salt or fleur de sel, but it doesn't have iodine in it, and that's the key to kosher salt. Kosher salt should be the one that you've got put your salt pig is filled with. So it has the same look, but it is just salt. There is no anti-caking agents, no iodine added, and it is the most natural way to do your all-round cooking is with kosher salt. It is more expensive for some unknown reason. I've got no idea why. Why is it cheaper to buy salt with iodine in it? I don't know, but it doesn't make any sense to me. And it's actually hard to find salt that doesn't have iodine in it. So when you're buying your salt, wherever you buy it from, unless you know exactly where it's from and what salt it is, different brands, have a look, read the label. Like, and I'm not a label Nazi or anything like that, but read the label and have a look. If it's got anti-caking agent, it'll have more likely than not have other things in it. And proper natural salt will change everything about your food. Like, it makes it taste like it should, not that metallic, super salty taste.
Yeah.
So kosher salt's the all-rounder. Can be used to make a salt crust. So you mix it with egg whites to make a salt crust in all your baking, desserts, seasoning your meats before you cook them, your fish, everything. That is the salt. Now, when you're seasoning, a lot of those other ones we talked about before, I mean, rock salt, you're not going to do that with. Fleur de sel and flake salt, more for finishing and a little bit for curing. But general cooking, seasoning, it's important when you're seasoning your piece of fish or your chicken or whatever it is you're cooking, is don't season really close. So don't hold the salt really close to the surface, hold it up high. So you've seen a lot of people do a lot of funny things on Instagram with seasoning food. Hold it at probably, how far is that, Linda?
That would be, I reckon...
50 centimetres?
I was going to say 2 feet.
So okay, that would be 2 feet. So 2 feet away
50
from...
centimetres, yeah.
2 feet away from the surface of what you're seasoning, and just let it run through your fingers. And the reason you do that is that you'll get a more even coverage of salt, and you're not concentrating the salt in one spot, and it kind of rains down on the food. So you want it to, sort of snow down on top of the food. It gives you a much more even seasoning. And that's what kosher salt's really good, because the grain's really good through your fingers. Mm-hmm. It's not too grainy. It's not grainy enough. It's just right. Now, table salt, which is what we sort of started off talking about, iodine and all the rest of it, what's that good for? That's good for if you barbecue. So if you grill, and it's not good for seasoning your meats, what it's actually good for, if you barbecue over charcoal and you're having a bit of trouble controlling the temperature, or you're getting flare-ups in a particular spot, throw some salt on there. That'll knock the ash off your charcoal, and it'll also stop any flare-ups happening without you adding a liquid to cool it down and create too much steam. The other thing that's good for, and this is probably not valid in a home kitchen, but we used to keep a lot of table salt, like big handfuls of containers of table salt around the kitchen. If someone spilt something on the floor in the middle of service, something slippery, oily, we just throw a whole ton of salt on the floor, and that would stop people from slipping. And the only other thing I use it for is I make a mixture of quite a bit of salt, vinegar, and bicarb soda. And I bring that to the boil in a pot, and I dip my copper pots in it to clean my pots.
That's it? Okay.
But the only other one which I want to talk about, which is really common, which pops up everywhere, which is Himalayan pink salt. And there's been a lot of discussion and study about health benefits of Himalayan pink salt in particular. So it comes from the Punjab region of Pakistan. There is no known associated benefits over other salts to Himalayan pink salt. Have a look, because it comes in all forms. So rock salt, flake salt, table salt. So make sure you have a look, because sometimes you will find iodine added to it. It has got a slightly higher concentration of natural iodine in it, so you do get a little bit of that tiny, minuscule amount of that metallic taste. But if it's had iodine added to it, you'll know, because it's that really harsh, like table salt taste. And you can buy pink salt blocks, which of course you can cook on as well. So you can sort of season your food as you cook. So, yeah, but have a look around. I think everyone should have a minimum of 2 salts in their house, one being kosher salt and one being flake salt. If you do curing, like to make your own bacon, anything like that, I think certainly a fleur de sel is worth having as well, if not a rock salt for sort of general purpose use. Rock salt's also good for if you want to do like bake some potatoes or bake some whole vegetables, place them on a bed of salt. The salt draws the moisture out of the vegetable, so it doesn't steam in the oven. It will actually bake and roast. So that salt helps get rid of the humidity from the oven, so opposed to combi steam oven cooking. But if I want to do a whole celery act, it's a really good way to do it is actually put it on a bed of salt. Quite often you'll see people that make gnocchi put their potatoes on a bed of salt. So rock salt's good for that. Also good for like putting oysters on, because they don't slide around all over the place.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah.
Wow.
Salt.
Can you just go back to the barbecue bit?
Yeah.
So you got flare-ups in your barbecue.
Yeah, particularly on charcoal.
Charcoal.
This is charcoal,
okay.
not for gas.
Not for gas. I was going to say, hang on a minute.
Yeah.
Just
for charcoal.
Let me visualise that. Okay, so you got charcoal. Okay, cool.
So even if you can imagine in commercial kitchens, what we would have is big gas burners, and then around the burner there would be like it's sort of part of the underneath of the trivet. It's kind of like a catch tray. It's like a big donut. Okay, and that would catch any spills, and basically at the end of the night you pull that out, clean that, happy days. But every now and again, of course, you get oil in there, and because you're over open fire, that oil catches fire. We just used to dump salt on it. So salt will, it won't always extinguish, but it will cover a flame quite well, because the burning point of salt is massive. Like it's above 1800 degrees Celsius, I think. So if you want to extinguish some fire, salt's a really good one if you don't want to use water. So with something oil based, of course, you don't want to use water. So cover it with salt. So it's particularly good on charcoal. So when you've got charcoal, and the reason you get flare-ups in charcoal is because you've got too many gaps in between each piece of charcoal, and fat will collect when you cook. Just dump some salt on that fat and it'll stop it flaring up.
Wow. But
that's what table salt's for. The only other thing I want to mention is keeping your salt. So I said salt pigs before. I have salt pigs now. I cook a lot, so I go through my salt pretty quickly. And old mate that I was talking to in New Zealand, who's doing his hand harvested stuff, I was talking to him about it. So salt will, as in the example of the vegetables in the oven, the potato in the oven, it attracts moisture. So to keep your salt at its best is actually use very small little ramekins, what they call pinch bowls. That's probably for most home use better. And then keep the rest of your salt just in an airtight container, because it does pull moisture. So yeah, there you go. All about salt.
That is all about salt.
And it is the most important part. Like for me, I think you changed the way you cooked.
Yes.
And we didn't talk about blanching. So if you are blanching your food, or you are blanching your vegetables in a pot of boiling water, or you are doing your pasta in a pot of boiling water, the thing that I was always taught is that water should taste like seawater.
And it's
so you
true.
need to add.
Paul throws in so much salt that
you need to add as much salt,
but it's
to
true,
make it taste like seawater. Yeah, and that's how you get seasoning in your vegetables when you're blanching them. The other thing too is, which is becoming more and more popular, although probably maybe not our guys, is people that are doing smoking, have offset charcoal smokers or smoking boxes or anything like that, where they use wood chips. So wood chip manufacturers and people in the smoking industry say you should soak the wood chips in water, which is fine, which you should do. That helps create the smoke. Better way to do it is actually in apple cider vinegar, but season it. So you salt the apple cider vinegar, therefore you salt the wood chips. So when they burn, because smoke has water vapour, within that water vapour it will be seasoned. So the smoke that's rolling over, let's say you're doing a cold smoked salmon or bacon or a brisket, so the smoke that's rolling over the top of that to give you that smoke flavour and that smoke crust and all the other beautiful things associated with smoke is seasoned.
Apple cider vinegar. And would you use iodine table salt for that, or you would go back to kosher?
Yeah.
So you really do only use iodized table salt for cleaning your pots and putting out fires.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Now, I know this is not necessarily your thing, and I do have a beautiful friend who's a dietitian, and we should one day try to talk to her, but just about food types, because she's got a really great story about how food has changed over the years and the size of plates and what that has impacted on us as a species. But do you think that people's fear of salt is because, or they're feeling that salt isn't good for them? And you and I have had this discussion a couple of times about it's how you use salt.
Yeah, it's like anything. Like if it's in abundance, like it's not great for you. But neither's chocolate or beer or wine or.
I don't believe that.
But you know what I mean.
No, exactly. No, in moderation. And how you use it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people's adversity to salt has come from iodized table salt.
And using it too much.
Well, how many times have you been out to a restaurant, whether it be a good one or not so good one, or even just a casual cafe and people get their food delivered to the table and they reach straight for the salt and pepper without tasting their food.
Yeah.
So I used in one of the restaurants I used to have, we didn't put salt on the table because if I didn't season the food properly, I wasn't doing my job properly. So I refused to put salt on the table. If people wanted it, absolutely, they could have. I like salt, and I like that. But if used properly, it is the best flavour enhancer, the best natural flavour enhancer. I don't care what anyone says. You can put a rubble over a piece of chicken, soak it in mustard stock for 24 hours, whatever. But if you get a piece of chicken that's been seasoned perfectly and cooked perfectly, so we're talking as simple as salt and perfect cooking, forget the technique, forget the method of cooking, perfect cooking and salt, that chicken will be, as long as the chicken is good to start with as well, but that chicken will be the best ever.
Wow.
Yeah. So, from a health standpoint, it's very hard. I mean, if you have heart conditions, they say, okay,
but
don't go overboard with the salt. But there's salt in yogurt. There's salt in almost.
Well, that's why
everything.
We stopped eating a lot of those packets and jars of like a sauce or something years and years and years ago because they were really heavy in sodium.
But you're sitting here drinking a can of max taste, no sugar bubbles. How do you think that tastes? How do you think it gets its taste? I guarantee you that even though there's no sugar in it, there'll be a reasonably high percentage of sodium.
There is. Actually, I'm looking at it now. Just looking at the can going 49 milligrams or 2% of it is... Well, there you are.
2% of what, 300 mils?
75 mils.
2%. That's quite a lot.
7 mils.
That's quite a lot considering the size of the can, but that's how you get flavour into things.
That's how you get it. Okay.
So yeah, there you go. So if you want, a good way to improve your cooking is not only the technique you use, the preparation, which we talk a lot about, and the method that you follow, but seasoning is key. Super, super, super key. And salt isn't the only seasoning, I know, but it is the key. That's why you see chefs go from something like blanching in heavily salted water. If we did talk about something as simple as green beans, blanching green beans in heavily salted water, then transferring them to a pan with, let's say, some shallots, olive oil, a little bit of chili flakes or something like that. We're just doing a side dish of green beans, and then they hit it with salt when it's in the pan. So it's gone from salty, a little bit of salt in the pan as well, and then it gets put up onto a side dish, and then it gets finished with a little bit of salt. It's had 3 goes at getting some seasoning. Whereas what we do at home, or what a lot of people do at home, is just go, we'll just chuck some salt in the water. It's never enough. So you're not seasoning it, really, and then you're just hoping that the beans are going to taste good because there's nothing else that happened in between. Yeah, you've put olive oil and you might have made a nice dressing for it, but the dressing needs to be seasoned. And then once they're tossed through the dressing, that needs to be seasoned again, and then you serve it.
Okay.
Yeah, so salt, super important. I'm not saying you need to go and buy bucket loads of it or use bucket loads of it, but correct use of it will change like everything. Everything.
Well, there you are. I really didn't. I've actually wondered why you will go to different parts of the Cooking with Steam kitchen and get different types of salt when you're doing
the only
things.
other one which I wanted to mention, which I bought for my father-in-law a long time ago, which is one of the only things in the world which is naturally blue, is Persian blue salt. It's extraordinarily rare. So there's very few minerals in the world that are naturally blue, and Persian blue salt is one. So if you see that, have a go at that. It's super expensive. Super expensive. It's very fine grain, kind of something like kosher salt. But very distinct taste. And it's got little blue flecks through it. It looks poisonous, but it's just salt. But it's only because he does painting and he's interested in colours and all that sort of stuff. And it's very, very difficult to find natural things
I don't think
that
I've
are
ever
blue.
seen it anywhere, actually.
Yeah.
Persian blue salt.
Persian blue salt. So there's another one. But yeah, there's hundreds of them. There's red salts, there's yellow salts, there's heaps. Black salt, which a lot of people would be familiar with. Another good thing to do with your salt is if you do have a smoker, smoke your salt. That's delicious. So yeah, there you go. The world of salt.
Well, I think we've now
and you said we
exhausted
wouldn't have anything
that.
to talk about.
Well, there we are. Well, thanks for that.
We'll talk about pepper next week.
Stay tuned. Happy cooking, everybody. Bye.
See ya.
Thanks for listening to this podcast as we explore home cooking in a modern world. We'd love you to subscribe, and for more information, please go to our website, cookingwithsteam.com.